The conflict between Israel and Palestine is one of the most enduring and complex in the world. It is rooted in competing claims to the same land, a land sacred to both Jews and Palestinians. For over 70 years, this conflict has led to wars, uprisings, and countless lives lost. Despite international efforts, a lasting peace remains elusive. At the heart of the conflict is the question of statehood. Israel, established in 1948, is a Jewish state with a right to exist. Palestinians, however, seek their own independent state in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, territories occupied by Israel since 1967. This fundamental disagreement fuels the cycle of violence. The international community is deeply divided. Some countries strongly support Israel, while others sympathize with the Palestinians. This division makes finding a peaceful resolution incredibly challenging. The situation is further complicated by extremist groups on both sides who reject any compromise. The conflict's impact extends far beyond the Middle East. It inflames tensions across the globe and hampers efforts to address other pressing issues. As long as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict continues, it will remain a source of instability and suffering. On October 7, 2023, the world watched in horror as Hamas, the militant group controlling the Gaza Strip, launched a surprise attack on Israel. The assault, unprecedented in its scale and ferocity, marked a dangerous escalation in the conflict. Images of violence and destruction dominated news cycles, leaving many fearing a full-blown war. Hamas's attack, which involved infiltrating Israeli territory and firing thousands of rockets, aimed to inflict maximum casualties and sow terror among Israeli civilians. The response from Israel was swift and severe, with the Israel Defense Forces launching airstrikes on Gaza and amassing troops for a ground offensive. The international community reacted with a mixture of condemnation and concern. The United States, Israel's closest ally, pledged unwavering support, while European nations called for restraint. The United Nations Security Council, however, remained paralyzed, unable to agree on a joint statement due to divisions among its permanent members. The October 7th attack sent shockwaves throughout the Middle East and beyond. It underscored the fragility of the status quo and the ever-present potential for violence to erupt. The international community, grappling with the conflict's renewed intensity, faced urgent calls to find a way to de-escalate the situation and prevent further bloodshed. The United States has long been Israel's most steadfast ally, providing unwavering diplomatic, military, and economic support. This special relationship is rooted in shared democratic values, strategic interests, and a strong pro-Israel lobby within the U.S. In times of crisis, Israel can count on the United States to stand by its side. Following the October 7th attack, the Biden administration immediately affirmed its commitment to Israel's security. President Biden, in a televised address, condemned Hamas's actions as terrorism and pledged to provide Israel with whatever it needed to defend itself. This unwavering support was echoed by Congress, which swiftly approved billions of dollars in emergency aid to Israel. The U.S. military also sprang into action, deploying warships to the eastern Mediterranean and sending additional troops to the region. These moves were intended to deter further attacks by Hamas or its allies and demonstrate American resolve to potential adversaries. The U.S. also shared intelligence with Israel and worked to coordinate international support. America's unwavering support for Israel, however, comes at a price. It often draws criticism from Arab and Muslim countries, who accuse the U.S. of bias and fueling the conflict. The U.S. also faces pressure from human rights groups concerned about civilian casualties in Gaza. Nevertheless, the U.S. remains committed to Israel's security, viewing it as paramount to its interests in the region. Section 4. The Iron Dome and Beyond. America's military aid. The United States provides Israel with billions in military aid annually, including advanced weaponry and intelligence sharing. The Iron Dome, developed with U.S. funding, intercepts rockets from Gaza, saving countless lives. Beyond the Iron Dome, the U.S. supplies Israel with fighter jets, helicopters, and precision-guided munitions. America's military aid to Israel is not without controversy. Nevertheless, The U.S. remains committed to Israel's security, viewing it as crucial for regional stability. Section 5. Biden's Balancing Act: Diplomacy Amidst Chaos. President Biden, facing one of the most severe escalations in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, has been engaged in a delicate diplomatic balancing act. His administration, while firmly supporting Israel's right to defend itself, has also urged restraint and emphasized the need to avoid civilian casualties. Biden's challenge is to navigate these competing pressures while trying to prevent the conflict from spiraling out of control. In the immediate aftermath of the October 7th attack, Biden spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, expressing his condolences and reaffirming America's unwavering support. He also dispatched Secretary of State Antony Blinken to the Middle East to engage in shuttle diplomacy, meeting with Israeli and Arab leaders in a bid to de-escalate the situation. Blinken's mission, however, has been met with limited success. While he has reiterated the U.S. commitment to a two-state solution and called for a ceasefire, there appears to be little appetite for compromise on either side. Israel, determined to dismantle Hamas's military capabilities, has continued its offensive in Gaza, while Hamas has vowed to fight on. The Biden administration has also faced criticism for its handling of the crisis. Some accuse the U.S. of not doing enough to rein in Israel, while others criticize the decision to veto a UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire. The administration argues that its approach, while difficult, is the best way to protect U.S. interests and ultimately achieve a lasting peace. Section 6. Russia's Middle Eastern chess game. Russia, a resurgent power on the global stage, has been actively expanding its influence in the Middle East in recent years. The region, with its strategic importance, energy resources, and complex web of alliances, presents an opportunity for Russia to challenge U.S. dominance and advance its geopolitical interests. Russia's approach to the Middle East differs markedly from that of the United States. While the U.S. has traditionally relied on its military might and close alliances with countries like Israel and Saudi Arabia, Russia has adopted a more nuanced strategy, cultivating relationships with a wider range of actors, including those often at odds with the West. This approach has allowed Russia to gain a foothold in countries like Syria, where its military intervention has propped up the regime of Bashar al-Assad. It has also forged close ties with Iran, a key player in the region and a staunch adversary of the United States and Israel. Russia's willingness to engage with actors shunned by the West has enabled it to carve out a distinct role for itself in the region's complex geopolitical landscape. Russia's growing influence in the Middle East has not gone unnoticed in Washington. The U.S. views Russia's activities as a direct challenge to its interests and has accused Moscow of sowing instability and undermining efforts to promote peace and security. The competition for influence between the two powers is likely to intensify in the coming years, adding another layer of complexity to an already volatile region. Section 7. Hamas in Moscow. A calculated embrace. Russia's engagement with Hamas, the militant group controlling the Gaza Strip, is a prime example of its willingness to court actors, often deemed off-limits by the West. While the U.S. and its allies designate Hamas as a terrorist organization, Russia has adopted a more ambiguous stance, referring to it as a legitimate political force. This calculated embrace of Hamas serves several strategic purposes for Russia. Firstly, it allows Moscow to present itself as an honest broker in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, capable of engaging with all parties. This image contrasts with that of the United States, which is often seen as biased in favor of Israel. Secondly, by courting Hamas, Russia gains leverage over Israel, which is wary of Moscow's growing influence in the region. This leverage could prove useful in future negotiations or crises, allowing Russia to exert pressure on Israel or extract concessions. Finally, Russia's engagement with Hamas aligns with its broader goal of challenging U.S. influence in the Middle East. By supporting groups opposed to the U.S. and its allies, Russia seeks to undermine American hegemony and reshape the regional order to its advantage. Russia's relationship with Hamas, however, is not without its risks. It exposes Moscow to criticism from the West, and could complicate its relations with countries like Egypt and Jordan, which view Hamas as a threat. Nevertheless, Russia appears willing to accept these risks in pursuit of its strategic objectives.